Those 3 words. Not necessarily the ones he wanted to hear, but any words at all are good enough for him. This wonderful moment, however, is short-lived, as Subaru finds his body quickly hitting the ground, Rem sitting on top of him. She is just as suspicious of him as their very first meeting that single year ago, asking what his aims are, but more importantly, asking who she is. Losing your memories via gluttony shouldn't make you forget your own name, nor does losing the name. Rem is in a state that we are kind of unfamiliar with, something to do with either Leigh's death or Luis's current state, I would assume. Speaking of Luis, she has now become exceptionally protective of Subaru, tackling Rem off of Subaru, as he screams out at her to get away from her, pushing her off and holding her to the ground. Rem tries to stand up to protest, but she cannot even use her legs, as the feedback from Rem's fight in Arc 6 slams into her at full speed, collapsing back down to the grassy plain. Subaru looks on in full regret at what he perceives he had done to Rem. He had to release some of Rem's burden, making her reliant on utilizing Rem. This is all his fault. In this hopeless situation, with a Rem who has no memory of her hero or even herself, and a rabid Luis, the responsibility he bore was all the more heavy. Your name is Rem. The blue-haired girl looks at him in confusion as Subaru rapidly calms himself down. The situation they are in is dire, and all he needs her to do is be there for him, talk to him, to just be looking around. Her assumption is to make sure the coast is clear, but no. He just wants to know that she is here, and that she is alive, and that this is all real. Subaru immediately dashes into strategizing, noting that due to his contract with Bayako, he is likely serving as a GPS. What is next is securing a water source, and then foraging edible grass and fruits. With Rem's legs out, he will just have to carry her everywhere. Before they head out, Rem asks what they can do about the child, who has seemingly been entirely mind-fucked by Return by Death, making what happened to her kind of similar to what Al does to people with his looping. Subaru, however, does not take pity on her. He didn't save her, and he didn't even think about saving her. Her and her siblings have committed unforgivable evils. His heart will not ache if he leaves her here. However, from Rem's point of view, a person who is lacking episodic memories similar to how Al lives life, this is a child. This strange man who smells poorly is abandoning a child in this field, as she is assured that she was right to believe in herself, grabbing Subaru from behind and throttling his neck. She can never trust someone like him, especially with such miasma. Subaru's first words to Rem were about her hero being back, and the first thing she sees from him is cruelty. When he awakens from the strangulation, he's alive and well, but Rem and Luis are gone. He follows some drag marks in the grass, yelling out for Rem, only for the corner of his vision to pick up on something, and before he can call her name again, he suddenly flies backwards. He tries to move, but he has become pinned to a tree, as an arrow rests inside of his innards. What the hell is going on? Where is this place? What should he do? Where's Rem? Is Rem okay? The Pleiades watchtower had been completely destroyed. Anastasia takes charge of the horrific display, as everyone remains minus Subaru and Rem. Volcanica also remains, seemingly acting quite obedient to Emilia. Rem utilizes her synesthesia to note that Rem is alive, and Bayako confirms that Subaru acts as a GPS and he is also alive. The shadow was supposedly made of the yin element, so their only expert to track down Subaru would be Betty. Shamak is a yin spell, and its special quality is separation. A low-grade Shamak separates a body from its awareness, whereas a high-grade rends space from itself. For some reason, Satella had brought Subaru to Wallachia. This poses multiple issues for obvious reasons. An unsanctioned surprise border crossing from one of the Knights of Lagunica is quite the issue. Despite the non-aggression pact form in EX4, this would likely still be a big deal. In fact, Wallachia had banned travel during the royal selection. Same with Casteco, but they had walked that back. Emilia immediately springs into action, talking about taking Volcanica's blood, going to Pristella, then taking Roy back to the capital, then finally heading to Wallachia for Subaru. Emilia's cool-headedness and desire to not rush things is great, and is much appreciated after the Emilia is dumb gags. Betty breaks this pipe dream, however, because Subaru cannot wait months like all of this travel would require. Subaru's gate is broken, and without Bayako, he will die from mana poisoning. Melee also clues them in on one little important point. Rem and Subaru are with the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. Arc 7 Phase 1 is full of these little flashbacks before nearly every chapter, something that is removed from the light novel version, so I won't really be talking about them that much. The first one we see is Betty telling Subaru about how he's always on the brink of death, as he resets from his brutal murder. He thinks about his death, before shaking off any self-loathing thoughts to tell himself to show them how great he can be. It's a small moment, but things like this and like the entirety of Arc 5 are super rewarding to see. Subaru actually progressing and picking stuff up from his encounters, even 7 arcs in. He attempts to use Corleones to find Rem, but doesn't pick up her or Luis, meaning either they have moved far away already, or Corleones requires a two-way link of trust to actually function. Subaru deduces that Rem has lost her episodic memories, meaning she doesn't remember a ton of stuff, but also at least remembers basic concepts. He asks himself briefly before moving on, is this really Rem? He doesn't answer this question himself, but the narrative had given us an answer to work with in the arc prior. This is not the same person Subaru or anybody had come to know. Rem who had no inferiority complex, who had no pride as an Oni, and knew nothing of Natsuki Subaru, was not Rem. Yet this serves as a wonderful parallel, once again, like I mentioned in Arc 6 Phase 5. This is just like the iconic Episode 18 in some ways, where Rem sees a person that Subaru cannot see himself. Subaru follows a clearing in the forest, walking towards a camping grounds hoping to snag a knife, until somebody appears out of thin air. At the right side of his neck was a sword, telling him to choose every one of his words with the utmost care. Noticing his weird attire, the man is sure that Subaru is not from here, and that his whip is terribly inconvenient for a forest. Subaru was likely not here to kill him. We get this illustration, because we're not supposed to know who this guy is, but Atsuka didn't even fucking try. This is clearly Vincent. He asks the Emperor if he can teleport or go invisible, because surely he could not evade his senses, because he's ordinary. Subaru had come across multiple superhuman-like characters, and Vincent was not one of them. Vincent utilized concealment, making himself able to disappear and reappear at will, with the downside of having it deactivated if he's touched or his presence is known. Subaru asks if he has seen a blue-haired girl, and Vincent says no. And if you are separated in this forest, focus on your own survival, which he of course denies. Vincent peers into Subaru's eyes, seeing a man who does not tell lies or slander, and allows him to borrow his intellect, as he informs Vincent of how he got here, minus a few details of course. Vincent tells him he has been tricked. Rem is quick enough on her feet, memories or not, to know she is being hunted. She left fake leads in the grass, as Vincent hands him a bag containing a knife. This is not a forest he can confront with a whip. He thanks the masked man, saying he can't pay him back, but he says that's okay. He would like to be the one who bestows to another sometimes. Subaru tells him his name, saying he owes him one and that he will definitely return the favor he was given. Before he leaves, he warns Vincent of a hunter that will kill you no matter how many lives you have, as he runs through slashing the greenery with his new knife, finding their real tracks before getting caught on a tied vine, as a branch thwaps him and injures his ribs. This was the beginning of his second battle against Rem. He frees himself from the trap, continuing on for about an hour, avoiding another 10 traps. The only reason he is able to pursue is due to sloppy tracks from Luis, who is likely not being cooperative. Immediately, he regrets feeling thankful to Luis in some way, becoming frustrated by his current conditions. Why does it turn out like this? Why does it always end up this way? Nothing ends neatly or smoothly, but that's enough. Fate may show him the cruelest path every time, but he stands up every time he falls. The man who finally made his hardships into his own whip. Sooner or later, Rem will realize Luis is sabotaging her, and he has to either catch up or figure out a way to stall them. There is no way they aren't aware of his pursuit, and his miasma smell is unbelievably strong after RBDing, and he had spent half a day dying countless times in that tower. As he continues, he notes that a tree has its bark stripped away, likely by Luis, but wouldn't Rem notice? And if it's the Rem he knows, she would attack. As he spins around to see her in a tree leaping directly at him, she hits him directly in the face, blood pouring from his nose, but he only tries to appeal to her. She begs him to just stop, to end this seemingly endless pursuit, as her nose feels like it will be twisted off by his smell. He tries and tries, asking her to let him redo this. He is the one at fault. He couldn't explain a single thing about what's going on, and he was selfish. She's not amused, however. He chased them around, he smells awful, and tried to abandon a little girl. Subaru is a despicable person, and he doesn't know what to say. What he does do, however, is move before his body can think, knocking Rem to the ground as an arrow flies directly overhead. Subaru thinks back to an encounter with Clint, who tells him, should he be in a fight alone, his best course of action is to run. Put every last drop of effort into running away, as fast as your legs can carry you, as a tree overhead snaps from the collision of the arrow, having Subaru roll himself and Rem out of its path of destruction. He rolls into a pit trap Rem had created, slamming into the ground and breaking some of the fingers on his left hand, as his injuries only continue to accumulate. Rem pushes him away, crawling off as Subaru is in agony. She asks what the fuck he's even doing, and informs her of the person hunting him through the woods. A tree explodes as soon as he peeks out of the hole, and he collapses back down, left only to think why they have become targets. A fight with a bowman is far different than a sniper, as bows need to be drawn back. This would be a short-term battle. Just like Clint taught him, the only way is to run. He tells Rem he will climb out and take their attention so Rem can flee, and after he buys enough time, he'll run too. He asks her to leave some markers so that they don't stay separated, but Rem is just frustrated. The man who decides everything is, once again, opting to abandon the child, as she looks up to see Luis still sitting in a tree unconscious. He notices this too, clenching his teeth. The hero, Natsuki Subaru, will save Luis as well. He baits an arrow out, but after 2 seconds, another arrow comes. Rem throws a stone in the direction of the hunter, smashing up the sniper fire, as Subaru makes it to Luis's body. Inside, his heart felt a strong sense of rejection. This is a Sin Archbishop. His indecision is shattered by Rem urging him on, as he rushes back as fast as he can before being interrupted by none other than a massive snake witch beast. The beast opens its maw, lunging at Subaru as he begins to think about what to do in the next loop, until the snake is pierced by an arrow. The snake, still alive, turns its sights on the bowman. A violent battle between man and witch beast was unfolding beyond the trees. He puts Luis on his back, scooping up Rem and running as fast as he can. He's exhausted, both physically and mentally, and Rem tugs on his ear, pointing out the sound of rushing water, telling him to erase his tracks and get a drink. A giant waterfall sits beyond, as they suddenly hear a ferocious roar in the sky, making them believe the snake has won and it is coming. Rem demands he leave her, but he refuses. What more can he do? A man who brought a child and a woman who can't move her legs, who is so exhausted. What more can you do? Rem in Arc 7 is kind of like Subaru's abusive inner monologue, but in terms of an actual person that he can't ignore. Throughout Phase 1, Subaru begins to doubt himself, but quickly slaps himself out of that destructive mindset. With Rem, he can't just, turn her off. The same Rem that told Subaru he never gives up in the face of such strong adversity now maligns him for the same exact toxic stubbornness that he has never lost. He yells back that if she is going to die, he better die instead. And we get to see Rem react to meeting Arc 1 Subaru for the first time, and now we get to see her meeting modern Subaru for the first time. I've talked before about how it's cool to see Subaru from outsiders' point of views, because if you have any empathy, you know that he's kind of weird and suspicious, and we get a nice reminder of that. The people you meet at any point in their life aren't totally representative of who they are. These isolated moments that you encounter someone in, whether it be for the first time or someone just having an odd day, is not completely indicative of their character. Arc 2 Subaru wasn't some suspicious spy, but he was a kid getting crushed by the weight of a new world and new expectations without a shred of self-worth. Arc 7 Subaru isn't some suspicious child beater. He's barely an adult trying his best to make the best of a bad situation. That clearly, more is going on beneath the surface of what seems pretty bad. Even though he abandoned that child, even though he reeks of that witch, and even though he pursued you through the forest, there is more to every story. There is more than meets the eye. A lesson that I learned while growing up is that when people do dumb shit or what seems like evil shit, when I was younger, I would ascribe malice or think that it was intentional. At the end of the day, the dumb shit people do in life usually isn't out of malice. It usually isn't premeditated. They just did something dumb. And some of you might disagree, but most people out there aren't committing evil for fun. That one action does not make up who they are as a person. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes of a human life than you may ever know. So try to be a bit more forgiving to people's circumstances and understand that some people are just goofy. Some people do beat children, though. Subaru's remaining option was to fly. Rem obviously was not happy with this. The fall was 10 meters, a natural suicide act. He tells her, though, it's not suicide, and even if it was, they die together. He is the one who will grant your wish, because he is your hero. As he jumps off the cliff, landing in the water to minimize damage, but damn, it still hurts. As the river picks him up, many thoughts race through his head. Are his friends safe? If Patrochet was here, she would have rescued him. Saving and getting saved. He repeated this cycle many times. He's glad he didn't cry out when his fingers broke. He didn't want to do anything dumb in front of Rem, or Emilia, or Beatrice, or Petra, or Garfield. Everyone else knew how pathetic he was, so it didn't matter with them. Things would take a turn if Roswell knew about it, so he had to continue hiding it. He needed to help the people of Pristella, the royal selection, everyone. He crawls out of the water, his senses distant and dull, laying Rem on the ground. Everyone is safe, as Subaru collapses on the spot. What he wished for was neither for Hunter nor Snake, but for someone to save Rem. He regains consciousness with a shoe in his mouth. When he tries to speak, he gets kicked in the head. His hands are tied behind his back, and his legs are bound as two men argue in front of him. One kindly speaks to him and takes his blindfold off. He's in a clearing with tents and campfires, being informed he has been taken prisoner. The camp he was in looked like it was raised for war, and Subaru asks his guard where Rem is, the guard noting she is clearly important to Subaru. The man had bright orange hair, looking only a little older than Subaru. A warrior, not a knight. A difference that Subaru had learned over his year in this world. He asks again, and the man calls him stubborn, something he likes. Rem is safe, and so is Luis. The man tells him he has questions for him, as the abusive man from earlier who had a shoe in his mouth stomps on Subaru's broken fingers, telling him he just needs to answer them. The orange-haired man yells out to the other guy, Jamal, telling him to stop. He steps off Subaru's hand, telling him to thank Todd. Todd apologizes to Subaru as Jamal leaves, calling him quite prickly. Rem put up quite a fight, and it had hurt Jamal's pride, so he's lashing out. Subaru mutters that he hates him, and Todd chuckles, because he doesn't really like him that much either. Todd asks if he is one of the Shadrack, to which Subaru of course denies because he has no idea what that is. Nobody would lie when asked about their own warrior clan, so Todd accepts it. The Shadrack are the people they are here searching for. The forest is expansive, however. The search could take years, and if it takes years, he could lose his fiancée. Todd holds up his end of the bargain, as he allows Subaru to see Rem. He asks to be guided, and Todd calls him impudent, like he must be a noble. Speaking of nobles, where did Subaru get that knife? He sits in silence, fearing that the man in the forest was one of the Shadrakians, so he crafts a lie that the knife is a family heirloom. That is quite something, as the knife has their national emblem. He looks around, noting the flag with a wolf being pierced. As he mutters, he is in the sacred Valachian Empire. The impression he had of this nation was that of a lair of evil. He cannot carelessly reveal his true origin of Lagunica. His trump card of revealing his connections to Lagunican nobility, just like that, vanished into thin air. He's escorted to Rem, shuffling over so quickly he trips on his chains, thanking Todd for the help. Todd cuts his binds, but he can't wander around or he'll just get captured by another encampment. Within the Imperial army, you'd be hard-pressed to find people like Todd who dislike violence. In a few days, a supply convoy will come through. That is how they can leave the camp. Todd also informs him that Louise is receiving medical treatment, sending Subaru into a panic that she will be restored and kill everyone, as he rushes to the tent. His worries are for naught, however, as Louise launches out of the tent, knocking him over, still pretty stupid. Subaru asks if it's really okay for them to stay here, and he says of course, but not for free. He who does not work shall not eat. Todd takes Subaru to a medical tent and resets his fingers, as he hands him a thick green medicine that should speed up his healing. Subaru laments how he is now without healing magic, something that Todd had apparently never seen before, a faraway tale for the average person. He's even shocked to hear Subaru mention it. However, he's also kind of glad healing magic isn't around, considering it cruel. This is a perspective that shocks Subaru, but the way Todd sees it, having your wounds healing within an instant means that you would be forced back up and into the fray, immediately, with no downtime. He can't help but feel terrified by the prospect, and I mean, is he wrong? Look at Subaru throughout all these arcs. This is the first arc where he doesn't have healing magic and he's absolutely destroyed in almost every way. He apologizes for going off topic, asking why Rem snaps at him so much. Subaru says there was an unforeseen accident, looking over to Louise. Todd says that they don't seem old enough for this to be their daughter, so who is this? And he says that she's just a stranger, who isn't a good person. Either way though, she's your traveling companion. No matter where you're headed, you should work on improving relations. Changing the subject again, Todd asks for some help, pointing towards some black tents. They hold the stockpiles for the camp, but he needs Subaru to tidy them up and organize them, considering Subaru prides himself on keeping stuff neat and tidy, which is something Subaru never said. After working in the tent, Subaru returns to Rem, and Rem is irritated that she has to share a sleeping place with him. She pulls Louise in, giving her a lap pillow. She's once again confused by how Subaru can be so cold to the young girl, and he says that she kept interfering with his work, toppling over and scattering his organization. Thanks to her, he has made zero progress. She counters with the fact that Louise clearly knows nothing, but Rem also knows nothing, and still wouldn't do that. He sprawls on the ground, grateful for Todd for giving them their own tent, as Rem passes him a meal. Rem looks over towards Subaru only to be shocked, as a tear rolls down his face. Something even he didn't realize. It wasn't from the pain, it was the calm, quiet moment he finally got to spend with Rem. They're talking and eating together, and it made him happy. He's spouting nonsense again. It's natural to think he's being disgusting, but it's the truth. For such a long time, he wanted to spend time with her like this again, peacefully. She of course doesn't understand, but she wouldn't laugh at him while he weeps, even though she finds it eerie. Subaru compliments the meal they were given, and Rem says that she couldn't enjoy hers because of his smell. It's unfair. He points out something else that's unfair. Louise. She must smell just like him, but she's ignoring it. However, Rem says that she doesn't smell like miasma at all, confusing Subaru greatly. She asks him to put the bowls away so they can get ready for bed, and as he exits the tent, he notes his fingers are already not hurting. It was at this point that I was positive Todd was evil. I had an inkling the entire time, but this was something that set it in stone for me. Todd talks so much shit about healing magic, but doesn't this medicine more or less do the trick? A silhouette watches Subaru leave his tent. As Jamal mutters, he has the nerve to strut around like this. The next day, Subaru thinks about the damage that had been done to the stockpiling, as well as his present life circumstances, saying it's better than being harassed. His mind lingers to high school, where he was ignored but not harassed. He wishes all of his classmates good lives as he continues working, and seemingly, Louise had learned to not interfere with his work this time. Subaru tumbles over as Jamal enters, asking him what he's doing on the ground, stepping on his broken fingers yet again, stifling a scream. Louise clings to Jamal's leg. He leans down and grabs her by the hair, tearing her off as Subaru lashes out that she's just a child. Who cares though? He doesn't like her either. He kicks Subaru in the head, cracking his tooth. He tells him that he outranks Todd, as he kicks Subaru again. If he didn't have that noble possession, he would have been torn limb from limb for what Rem did. Then, Todd appears, and attention fills the tent instantly as Jamal leaves in anger. Todd asks him if he's okay, and informs him that Rem is safe in public right now. Jamal is from lower nobility, so promotion to General 3rd Class isn't just a dream. But of course, Subaru has no idea what that is, and I'm near positive Todd knows he's bullshitting at this point. Todd wants to take him back to the medical tent, but he insists on seeing Rem first, who asks him if he's been injured again. Later that day, they eat the leftovers they had been given as they talk about their day. Rem helped with the cooking, and he wonders if her body remembered how to do it all. She said she wishes, but that would be too convenient. She understands that he used to know her, but no matter how many times he calls her Rem, she can't accept it. Todd sits down at their table, saying he wants to build influence with them, and he's glad that the two of them can speak so freely now. Subaru asks about Todd's fiancée, who lives in the Imperial capital, and he might be stuck here for years. Subaru has some inner turmoil about ratting on the person who had helped him in the woods, asking if they will fight the Shadrack should they find them. They want to negotiate, however, not fight. They want to set up a vassal tribe, and once all the camps are set up, they plan to go all in searching the forest. Subaru warns them of huge witch beasts in the forest, catching Todd off guard yet again. It's not every day a witch beast shows up in Wallachia. Todd starts to pry Subaru open for information, asking about every last drop of detail, telling Subaru that his words have saved them. Intense energy overtakes the camp as Rem and Subaru just watch. They return to their tent with Luis, and he mutters that he is worried about their saviors. Rem, however, does not have a good impression of Todd. Subaru inquires as to why, and she says, "People who do not ask for others' names are difficult to trust." Subaru completely freezes, stopping in place. What if asking for a name had a different meaning in Wallachia? What if there was some cultural barrier or something? He doesn't know what to make of this new revelation. The next morning, Todd wakes up Subaru, and the first thing Subaru does is tell him his full name. He is confused, but he assures him he didn't think he was rude. He thanks Subaru as the information he gave them changed their plans. Military operations were called off immediately, so Todd gets to go see his fiancée. Rem wakes up saying it smells strange, different from Subaru. Todd leans down and opens the tent flap and motions for them to come out. A dense plume of smoke was spouted with tremendous momentum. The forest is burning to the ground. Subaru stammers, "I thought you didn't want to fight them," but he replies the issue had been taken care of, and they won't be able to oppose the Emperor anymore. Todd is completely nonchalant about the massacre in the forest, and as he leaves, Subaru cannot mutter a single word. Rem knows it isn't his fault, but she doesn't want to be near Subaru as she crawls away from him. Luis wakes up as something hits his back extremely hard. She begins to cry out, but it wasn't her that hit Subaru's back, as an arrow stands straight out of him. Rem screams, and Subaru's dying thoughts are that this was the first time hearing her normal scream. Luis approaches him frantically, and Rem rushes back to his side, calling out for help. Rem is so kind, he thought. Even if he had created a world set on fire with a careless word, she would still help. The arrow was also poisoned, as he looked up to see a child's silhouette. Her gaze pierced through Subaru with intent to kill, but it was only natural for her to hate him. This is retribution. His reset point is right when he first met Todd and Jamal, and to be quite frank, I was initially disappointed by this, as I feel that having Subaru suffer permanent consequences would have been a cool concept, but things actually get worse. Subaru is indifferent towards his death. What he regretted more was the burning of the forest. He bears the responsibility of those deaths, even if he has reset. He will never let go of that mistake. He will establish friendly ties with Todd and Jamal so he can negotiate a way for them to not rend the Shadrackians asunder. But before he can think of more plans, Todd snaps him out of thought. And when Subaru begins to talk, Todd immediately cuts him off. "Why are you looking at me that way?" Todd's normal, friendly tone has switched to a cold, hard voice, sending shivers down Subaru's spine, as he digs a blade into Subaru's shoulder. Even Jamal is shocked, saying this isn't what they agreed upon. Todd tells him that this is a preemptive strike, as when he took off his blindfold, Subaru's eyes were intent on manipulating him. This sort of guy is frightening, and he resolves to kill Subaru quickly. Jamal tries to stop him. How could he think that clearly when he just woke up? But clearly he must have been pretending, right? Todd successfully works with Jamal as well, his fury being dismantled. Wanting to take revenge for what Rem did, also agrees to kill Subaru. As Jamal approaches him, Subaru yells out, "Shadrack people." Todd stops Jamal, as Subaru spills that he knows their location, because he is one of them. Todd seems a bit skeptical at first, but setting aside skin color, Subaru's hair color is in line with the Shadrackians. The knife and the clothes he wears were simply stolen from a traveler, as the two hold each other's gaze. Would he sell out his tribe for his life? Of course he would. He must channel the expression and voice of a deplorable bootlicker to win Todd over. Jamal calls him rotten as Todd concludes he must be telling the truth. Rem notices them dragging a beaten, stabbed Subaru and yells out what they plan to do with him. He is taken to an army of 20 soldiers who will leave with Subaru to find the Shadrack people. Subaru begins to lead them to what they believe is the camp, plotting on how to free Rem. He notes that his reset has made him start off worse with Rem, and it introduces a super cool aspect to Arc 7. Previously, the main thing preventing Subaru from resetting is himself, the fear of death, and his desire to respect himself, but Arc 7 makes him go, "I literally cannot reset," as it changed my demeanor and made Todd hostile, and every reset makes Rem dislike me more and more. There's always some reason why RBDing isn't the correct approach, contrary to what YouTube commenters might say. He tries to convince them to break up the search and get more soldiers, but the higher-ups wouldn't allow that. They have to confirm the Shadrack presence first. Besides, if they don't return, the forest will be deemed too dangerous and burned to ash. He begins to see a more positive side to Todd and Jamal's relationship, the two of them apparently being related due to Todd's upcoming marriage. But unfortunately for them, Subaru is not moved by this. Rem is more important, and that is why Subaru has decided to put them in harm's way. As he thinks of this, a soldier suddenly spots one of the snake witch beasts from prior. Its target, Natsuki Subaru. Of course, these are simple beasts, and its target quickly changes when the Imperial soldiers fight back. Subaru thinks about making a break for it, but something doesn't feel right, and he hangs his head. Just as he hangs it, an axe hits the tree above him. His gaze crosses Todd's, who has a piercing look in his eyes. Subaru begins to run with all of his might, feeling a different fear when compared to the Sin Archbishops, the Witch Beasts, or even Reed Estrella. Those eyes were brimming with vindictiveness, pitch black intent to kill. A knife pierces Subaru's shoulder blade, but he does not stop running. Out of breath, spilling out blood, and body aching, Subaru runs like he has never run before. Growing slower to the point a walking child would be faster, Subaru clung to the idea of REM. He lost his footing, plunging down head first, falling and falling. He wakes up as someone asks him how long he plans on sleeping. Subaru is a bit surprised he's alive, which the man mocks him for. Do the dead speak? His reaction entertains him more than a jester. Subaru slowly arises, imprisoned in a wooden cage. He is reassured that his pursuers are not here, but everything is clearly not okay. Subaru looks over, being trapped in the same wooden cage as Vincent Valencia, still donning his mask, or rags. The cage was of poor construction, and the people in the village had a lot to say about a human being caught, according to Vincent. He looks at the village, built fairly primitively with log cabins, and he deduces that the Shadrack live here. Vincent looks down at Subaru, asking if he found that woman. Subaru confirms, as his wounds have also been bandaged by the Shadrackians, and they are unsure what to do with him. He has stab wounds, broken fingers, damaged ribs, with multiple bruises. Subaru considers that Todd deduced that he was attracted to witch beasts and tried immediately to kill him. As he thinks, he notices two green eyes looking through the cage at him, and when he looks up, a little girl runs off. A young girl, around 10 years old, with pink-tipped hair. But what shocked Subaru the most was that this was the young girl that had killed him prior. A flame slowly approaches, and with it, an overpowering aura, and we are revealed to yet another dogshit ReZero female character design. It never ends. Subaru introduced himself, saying he is a pitiful, worn-out, lost child, and Vincent introduces himself as Abel. The lead woman, Mizelda, greets them, as Subaru warns them of an encampment of Imperial soldiers, telling them he wants to go save someone from them. Mizelda, however, says that there is nothing to fear, as the soldiers are just doing military exercises, and of course, Subaru knows their trick. She denounces the two men as Subaru nor Abel speak the truth. They do not suit us. Subaru could not vent his anger, as his body was broken, and his speech was not even persuasive. Right here, right now, what worth does Subaru Natsuki have? He snaps out of this negative thought pattern once again, refusing to give up. The Subaru of the past would set a limit arbitrarily, but he refused to admit defeat here. He tells Vincent that the Imperial soldiers will betray their word, setting the forest on fire, and for the first time, Vincent looks shocked. He begins to think about what Todd is doing right now, as it's likely he survived, meaning his betrayal would be announced and the forest would be lit. He has basically killed these people, gripping the bars as tight as he could. Vincent, however, tells him it is useless. They would not leave an opening for his strength. Subaru bites back that surely he hasn't given up, but Vincent has only been waiting for an opportunity for the pieces to be set. But if they plan on burning the jungle, that time might not come. He decides to trust Subaru's words, but if he's lying, he will pay with his life. He asks Subaru if he has the resolve to sacrifice everything in order to save what he truly desires, basically mirroring the aspects of Roswell and Al from prior, giving it all up for one solitary person. But Subaru's answer is fantastic. Subaru does not have that resolve. All he can offer is himself. If it's just that, then he can put it on the line. He responds to his words, calling him presumptuous, a vexing gesture, but it had no falsehoods. Vincent calls to the young girl, who still watches them, and she says Mizelda told them not to speak to men, but she's curious about Subaru. Why does he try so hard to save them? He tells her he doesn't want to see that look on her face, the feeling of loathing your enemies, clouded by hatred. Vincent requests her to bring Mizelda here, suggesting they undertake the lifeblood ritual. A ritual belonging to the Shadrackians, who place great value on pride and commitment. Subaru says he needs to be let out so that he can protect what is precious to him, which apparently makes him qualified to take part. The young girl asks if they should believe the words of these strange men, and she replies that it would be a waste to disregard their words. The ritual serves as a coming-of-age rite of passage, and Vincent believes should they pass this test, they will be considered as equals. For their obstacle, they must overcome the Elgina. The name alone sends shivers down the spines of the Shadrackians. Vincent asks if he has hardened his resolve, and Subaru doesn't respond, only saying that people who hide their face aren't good people. He has a reason to do it, but he will not deny the accusation. As they are taken outside, Vincent has some internal thoughts about Subaru and the kingdom, and when the term kingdom is used, it's usually referring to Lagunica, so it's pretty clear Vincent isn't stupid. He asks Subaru if he is planning on fleeing, and he responds that it would be a bad idea because what would happen to Vincent? He can only call him an idiotic wannabe hero. Now, this is something that will definitely be apparent in the near future, but Arc 7 is repeatedly bringing up Subaru's restlessness, something even he himself had commented on. How he never has a moment of downtime, that fate always shows him the cruelest path. He's always focusing on how to get from point A to B, sort of a meta reference to how much Subaru's had to deal with in just 1 year by piling it all on in Phase 1 endlessly. He is part of the way there to not single-handedly shoulder the burden and caring about himself, but this also includes needing to let himself rest. Even when he was beaten and bruised, Subaru would never stop getting back up. Something Todd spoke about when referring to healing magic. I feel that Arc 7 is gearing up to prepare Subaru for the prospect of unavoidable loss. Arc 5, whether you agree with him or not, was a total loss for Subaru. He failed to protect it all and without a moment's hesitation, immediately picked back up to head to the watchtower. In Arc 7, he is backed into a corner where people will die. He cannot reset and avoid it, and as mentioned earlier, resetting is an active detriment to him currently. Subaru's absolute victory is where nobody has to lose their life, even the people that tortured him. But I think Subaru's admirable trait of never giving up will be shown for its toxic roots. The physical state we saw Subaru in this phase is the worst he's ever been without literally dying. His shoulders were stabbed, his ribs were cracked, his fingers were broken, a shit ton of cuts and other bruises, and something even crazier is coming, all of which could be seen as heroic but something Vincent sees as idiotic. Vincent, Roswell, and Al are now 3 separate people who have told him his one-track heroism is far too excessive and idealistic, all for their own separate reasons, with Vincent's likely being the most down-to-earth one. Arc 7 Subaru will likely have to confront his own ideas about Rem, the root of his restlessness, and the idea of slowing down, but that's just my opinion. When Subaru and Vincent arrive at the arena, they are shoved down into a hole. They are then tossed a package containing their belongings, the knife embedded into Subaru's shoulder as well as his whip. Vincent retrieves his sword and a mantle, and Vincent examines Subaru's deplorable state, asking how much he can move his hands. He can't raise his right arm and his left hand is destroyed. Vincent tosses him a ring, saying you must kiss it before you use it, and it spews fire, as a snake witch beast comes out of the hole. Insane Al parallels here, by the way, to EX5, with him talking about how he and one other person battled a witch beast and only survived thanks to his domain. Subaru instinctively calls out to Bayako, being dragged by Vincent to the ground to avoid the snake. He tells Subaru to hold his breath, wrapping them in his invisibility cloak, saying it's unfortunate that the ritual is a test of strength against 2 weak men. Subaru hesitates, thinking about a snake's biology. They possess something called a pit organ, which detects heat, meaning their presence is detected, and the invisibility cloak is worthless, as the snake charges and Subaru fires off the ring at it, hitting it in the snout. They must either destroy its pit organ or break its horn. He looks around to see the Shadrackians ready to kill them at a moment's notice, as the difference in values between the 2 nations truly sinks in. He leaps forward, aiming his hand at the snake to prepare to fire another Goa, making it react, but he successfully tricked it. He swapped hands with the ring. The tip of his whip lashed out of his left hand, aiming at the branches overhead, leaping into the air. The Shadrackians cheer for him, realizing his plan, as he fires Goa at the edges of the ravine, turning it into a sea of hellfire. He runs the ring out of mana, as he creates a landslide of rocks, overwhelming the heat detection the snake was blessed with. Vincent sneaks up to its horn to get one last swipe, but it roars, blasting Vincent away and embedding his sword into its horn. The snake rushes towards the fallen Vincent, so Subaru declares that he can return by death. Uncontrollable pain fills him as his heart is squeezed. Yelling for the snake to keep its eyes on him, Subaru falls onto its head, trying to give Vincent's embedded sword one last push to cleave its horn in 2. He punches the hilt with all of his might, making sure the ring collides with the blade, detonating the ring with Subaru's right hand at the center of the explosion. The right half of his body had been scorched, and on the verge of death. He did not even notice the snake had lost its head. Somebody, a voice he could not make out, demands he get up. All he could think was for the person to allow him to lose a hold on his consciousness. Vincent tells him to stand up and pronounce, "What will happen to Rem? Speak with your own mouth. Your desires cannot be expressed by me." Matilda asks what the comrades in arms will shout out for them to do, as he turns to Subaru again. "Speak of what you desire. Ring out all that you have. Save Rem," is all Subaru can say, before losing his grip on his consciousness. The moment he muttered those words, the force behind the hand gripping him had grown stronger, as the Shadrackians declared to leave the woman to them. He felt something terrible swirling inside of him. A vortex swirling round and around, swallowing everything around his core. This horrible vortex would end up swallowing everything in its path. A malediction of death that had never been removed, always intertwined. A curse befitting greed, which would not sell his life over to anyone. These begrudged curses, which should by all means have eaten away at his life, meddled with each other, detested each other, refused to hand him over to the other, opposed each other, and as a result, they reached a conflicting answer. The curses would have it so that they would not let this vessel perish. I'm unsure of exactly what this paragraph means. All I can say for certain is that it's referring to the dragon's blood inside of him, possibly battling with the envy factor. The blood attempts to kill him, but the envy factor tends to enjoy keeping him alive and immune to the effects of certain authorities, so instead of killing him, it instead restores him. Subaru, barely awake, could feel something akin to the fervent zeal of a great number of people. A wet cloth is placed upon his face, making him immediately fear he is being waterboarded, but he is in safe hands. Subaru does not remember the second half of the fight, looking down to see his right arm look like he's wearing a black glove. He peels off the black coating to reveal his new arm. Vincent is here and asks if his arm is done looking repulsive. He believed him to be beyond saving, as everything below the wrist was gone. Before death, black sludge flooded out of his arm, and in the blink of an eye, it took shape. Subaru is confused as to why the dragon's blood wasn't triggered until this very moment. Yet another mystery to add to the pile. He thinks of Rem trying to immediately get out of bed, but he can't even lift himself up. His body has been defeated. He doesn't care about his state, and Vincent is not at all surprised, telling him to follow him. They exit the medical cabin to look up and see what was once the Imperial soldiers' campground, now engulfed in flames. He could hear distant battle cries as war raged on, and Subaru is in shock. Just how many people are dying? No matter what path he takes, people die. He can't save it all, and he will walk a path of blood. Vincent takes note of Subaru's shock. Isn't this what you asked for? He tells Vincent, don't be stupid. This isn't what he wanted at all, but did he think he could fulfill his wish without any blood being spilled? He rephrases. He thought he could realize his wish without any blood being spilled besides his own. A foolish assumption. Did he truly think that by spilling his own blood, the warring third party would stop? The hero mentality you strive to hold up is nothing but a ridiculous and negative quality. Delusions of heroism. You are a human, Natsuki Subaru. You are neither hero nor sage. Therefore, humans like you will repeatedly bleed, die, take, and be taken. It is a reality Subaru could not deny, but he could not accept it. Even after coming to this world, his morals were still that of a Japanese high school student. He could not acknowledge the tenets and common sense of the battlefield as obvious, everyday facts. Vincent does not desire to be a hero, nor does he cling to them. To shoulder various matters and advance towards a bountiful nature, a hero cannot do that. Subaru tries to retort, asking what he knows, hiding his face and all, but before he could even finish that, Vincent takes off the rags wrapping his face. Subaru understood that his soul knew he must submit to the person in front of him. At the same time, Imelda appears holding onto Rem, who calls him scum and slaps him across the face. She pulls back to punch him before noticing his body is covered in wounds. She changes tune instantly. They must treat Subaru or he'll die, but Imelda says it's useless. His wounds are too deep. Only his will is keeping him going, and even then, his will is fading because he finally got Rem back. Why? Why does he have to go that far? Because he wants her to be happy. He wants her to laugh, to smile. This is all he wants. That is all he needs. He wants her to be surrounded by her loved ones, in a place where she is accepted. He wants her to smile like she always does, that smile like a blooming flower, like the stars that twinkle far, far away. He says this, slowly growing limp, his neck unable to support his head, as she calls out to him and grabs his body, but there is no answer. Imelda yells out that they must bring peace to the spirit of this warrior as they begin to sing in unison. Sent off by that requiem, Subaru was on the verge of relinquishing his hold on this life. Rem shook her head, unable to accept it. She begs him, please, in a place like this, don't die, she endlessly cries out. The man who looked at her so tenderly and compassionately, despite being encased in such an unbearable, repulsive smell. You must not lose him here. It begged and pleaded with her soul. Suddenly, Louise wakes up. Rem turns around, tears in her eyes, as the young girl looks down at Subaru. Little by little, a warm sensation seeped into Rem from her shoulder where Louise had touched her. It was soft, a feeling that slowly tickled at the depths of her heart. Rem found it difficult to breathe, unable to hold back her tears from flowing down her cheeks. Whatever it was seeping into her from the girl's palm, it was stimulating a strange sensation that lay within her. It was swelling up, and she must not bottle it up like this. She had to set it free somewhere. Commanded by her instincts, she released it from her whole body. Vincent notes that it is healing magic, telling Rem to focus. Should her mind wander, it will be broken off. Do not let this opportunity go to waste. She still doesn't know what he is, but for now, if Subaru doesn't stay alive, he won't be able to see her smile. Vincent thinks how Subaru is terribly unlucky, but very lucky all at the same time. The people on his land had not yet realized the political upheaval of Wallachia, calling Belstets and the 9 divine generals traitors who are ignorant of the apex. He tells them to shiver and tremble as they await his return. Since he has survived, he will have Natsuki Subaru accompany him as he takes back the Wallachian Empire. There are a few side stories that I will summarize quickly here because this is already getting far too long. There is one where Vincent goes to the far eastern side of Wallachia at the edge of the Great Waterfall, and he ponders if the world they are in was but an island floating atop a huge mass of water, or perhaps it was telling them that there was no escape. He came here to visit a grave, a lone weathered tombstone for all of the emperors. He kicks it over, revealing no coffin or urn, but instead a sword, a dagger, and a cloak. We cut to after he gives Subaru the dagger, and if Subaru were killed, they would assume that they had killed Vincent due to his hair color. We also get confirmation that he definitely knew about Subaru. However, he thought the person he had encountered was impersonating Natsuki Subaru. Second, we cut back to Emilia and them, who are hesitant to start looking for Subaru immediately because the watchtower will be undefended, leaving it open to the witch cult. She wants to get a bunch of different viewpoints on their situation, like the Council of Elders or Roswell, but Betty says maybe not Roswell. Ram says that she will handle him, and Fox Echidna points out that Melee will be a useful tool for them and the witch cult to travel the sand dunes. But Emilia tells her that Subaru had forgiven the child, and while they might not forgive her yet, after a stern talking to, maybe they will. Now they must deal with Volcanica. Will he listen to what Emilia has to say? Finally, we have a very short story about Rem in the cell during Subaru's fucked up loop. She's thinking about the name Natsuki Subaru, something that confuses her because she cannot tell which is the first and the last name. But more importantly, this establishes an interesting trend of names. It's kind of always been present, but Arc 7 really hammers it home. You see it a lot in Arc 5 and 6 with Gluttony eating your name, and Arc 6 also has the chapter titled The Hell Bearing the Name of Oneself. Rem doesn't want to be called Rem because does she deserve to be? There's this concept, especially in medieval fantasy, of being worthy of your name, and having this name thrust on her with all these expectations from Subaru holds a lot of weight. Or how Subaru felt about his name during Arc 6 with no memories, or Julius and his whole thing with Reed. The point is, what is a name? Something I don't really know the answer to, but it's undeniable that names do affect you. How people perceive you or what connotations that name carries. For Rem or for Subaru, a very loaded name is being handed to them. A name with a lot of preconceived notions or expectations that some people are unsure of how they can match up to. A name that presupposes an identity that doesn't feel right. A lot of ReZero is simply about identity, and this is yet another stretch of it. Final thoughts for Arc 7 Phase 1, or Volume 26? It was very good. Possibly the strongest arc start so far. And I'm going into this knowing how controversial of an arc it is, so I'm interested to give my input as time goes by. So far, it's awesome. Super interesting and well fleshed out central ideas and great pacing for once, some really interesting new characters, and so far, a fantastic conflict with Todd being a super interesting antagonist thus far. Very, very excited to jump into Phase 2. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the funny YouTube algorithm. You can check the description down below to follow me on Twitter, where I'm objectively correct all the time. You can also join my Discord, where we talk about My Hero Academia, ReZero, Jujutsu Kaisen, and stuff like that. And you can also now become a YouTube member, which basically just gives you access to behind-the-scenes content, a little badge on comments, and live stream chats, and access to some emotes. Only do so if you want to support the channel, though. But that's about it, though. Thank you for watching. See ya.